The Gospel according to Luke. Probably one of the most important lines of the Gospel, according to Luke. Turns out he's my hero. You know, today we are celebrating Father John O'Connor's day, the day of the General Director. And I imagine Father John Connor there in his office in Rome, sitting there, fully aware that he can only focus on a certain amount of objectives. There's only a certain amount of things he can do. And he just hopes that we, as creative small groups, will do our part. I think about it years ago, the spiritual directors were local all over the country. And then there was an idea that also we needed to make spiritual directors available that would travel, that would be there. And so Father Raymond Cosgrave and other fathers, as a small creative group, had to figure out how to do that. Sounds pretty simple, but it's not really simple because this is a large country and you've got to be consistent. And you've got to figure it out. Now, Father John Connor in Rome, sitting in his office, maybe knows little about the details. He just hopes somebody is doing it. Also in the movie Lord of the Rings, that moment when Aragorn decides that we're going to attack the Black Gate. I think it's the Black Gate. And he says, you know, we have little chance of success. But we're doing this hoping, just hoping, that the little creative small group, the two hobbits, Frodo and Sam, are inside, and that if we can attract the enemy to the Dark Gate, they will be able to fulfill their mission and destroy the ring in, I think, what's called Mount Doom. See, they're not really, they don't know where they are. One group doesn't know where the other group is. They're just hoping. And of course, for me, the greatest example of all is Christ. Christ was God. And he came into this world and he had a mission. But for him too, he could only focus on a certain number of objectives. Also his obedience to the Father, to focus on Israel. And I'm sure many times he thought, oh, I'd like to go to Rome. All roads lead to Rome, per Father John Connor is. But he just had a hope that creative small groups would be inspired and go to the capital of what was the world that time. And there in Rome, Luke has the idea of writing a sequel. He had already written the Gospel. Now he's thinking about writing a sequel. Because what had happened, he was living a time when the apostles are dying. Their deaths were often violent to make it worse. And so there was a sense of discouragement in the early church that, well, maybe now it was just in the beginning, in the foundation when there was dynamism. And that dynamism would just naturally be lost. And we can imagine thinking himself, yeah, but if I write a sequel, the gospel was obvious, people would accept that, but if I write it and they don't accept it, it'll only increase the discouragement. And also, if he's going to write a sequel, he's got to criticize the emperor. Or it'll have no validity. And in a time of persecution, that might not be a good idea. Just might make things worse. But then he thinks, you know, I could end the story before that part. And he said, you know, what I could do is, I learned a lot writing the gospel. Obviously, he wrote the gospel, and now he's thinking about writing the Acts of the Apostles. So I learned a lot writing that gospel. First of all, how hard it is, etc., etc. And I could apply that to this new story. And I took the story course. Now, not in Cheshire. We checked the records, and Plenty said, no, Luke did not take the story course here. But he had that down. He understood it. And also, he could apply his skills of interviewing, which was the key to his gospel. But then the problem was that Paul was in jail in Rome. And imagine him thinking about that line in the gospel today that he actually wrote. I myself, it's Christ talking about himself, right? I myself will give you wisdom in your speaking. And he decides, you know what, I'm going for it. And he starts to write. And then, as always happens, whenever a creative small group heads out on a project with obedience, with everything in place, prudently well thought out, somebody shows up to help. Always happens. Help from an unexpected quarter. Well, what happened is when he finishes it, since the Christians in Rome were under persecution and really couldn't go out that much and had to stay at home, well, they had time to copy it. And as they copied it, they loved it. And then they could get it out to all the other cities where the Christians were, and it encouraged the church. So my hero is Luke. And I will use my own words, but I think I speak for the fathers and the professors. Professor back there, and he's analyzing what I'm saying from a historical point of view. But I think I can speak first, again, I'll say it in my own words, that what I want to do is form a new generation of Lukes, of great communicators. Great communicators. That can help Father John, Pope Francis, communicate in a new way, in this changing world. In this changing world. And in a new way, the unchanging message of the gospel, which Luke wrote one of them.